Welcome everyone to Ryerson University's Creative Innovation Studios web series, The Prediction, talking about tomorrow, today. My name is Shruti Shekar. I'm a telecom and tech reporter at Yahoo Finance Canada, and I'm here to talk about everything to do with technology, the arts industry, and everything that is talking about tomorrow, today. But first I want to introduce the director of the Creative Innovation Studio, Ramona Pringle. Hi, Ramona. How are you?
Hi, Shruti. Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too. Before we get into today's topics and everything, I really wanted to ask you what's been on your mind the past couple of weeks. At least from my end, I've been seeing a lot of still distress because of COVID-19. We recently heard a lot of layoffs coming out of Disney, 20,000 employees. We saw the Princess of Wales Theatre in Toronto open its doors and then quickly decide to shut its doors. And then we heard the iconic events location, the Mod Club, decide to close its doors. So I'm thinking a lot about live events. I'm thinking about how it all means for COVID. But more importantly, now we have a little bit of hope. We're hearing from Pfizer that we might have a vaccine coming out soon. They've been testing some people, and there seems to be some hope. But I don't know. At least for me, I feel like that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to change live events. What are your thoughts?
It's so interesting that these are the things you're thinking about, because they're entirely what we're focused on within the Creative Innovation Studio right now, and really especially with the Recovery Cohort, where we've got so many teams focused on rebuilding and reimagining the creative industries post-COVID, or in response to so many of these challenges. And it is a roller coaster. I think the reality that everyone has to consider, though, is for all of the creative industries, there's so much more than just that experience, that thing that you buy in the store, that movie you go see, the live event you go and participate in. There's months and months, if not years, of prep that go into it. And so even if there is good news that's on the horizon, maybe 6 months out or 8 months out, the predominant, I think, theme right now is uncertainty, and how are creators dealing with uncertainty, and how can they plan ahead? I mean, this is a very I think it's a very nerdy example to use, but I keep thinking like the moment that we're in right now in terms of what the future looks like is like Schrodinger's cat, right? Like, is the cat in the box alive, or is it dead? Is it both things at once? And how do you plan for a future where, like, in the summer, maybe we will be able to reemerge, maybe we will be able to go back to life as usual, but maybe we won't. And unfortunately, the reality is, if you are a creator who has got to put food on the table, most cases you've got to lean towards that case of being cautious, of being conservative, of being able to take care of your needs. And so even if there is that glimmer of hope on the horizon, that maybe you could be planning for that return to normalcy within the year, the challenge is, how can you do two things? How can you live two realities at once? So we've got some really fascinating examples of this. There's some incredible teams within the Creative Innovation Studio that are just doing excellent work and have historically done such great work. We've got Sugarcane that really are leaders in the live event space. They've revolutionized caravana and costumes. You'll have so much fun talking to them. Biko is an incredible jewelry company that was doing so well in so many really A-list stores, and has had to pivot because of the way that we engage with brands and the way that we shop has changed. And then Dan Spearin works so closely with all of our media teams, and I think has a very good sense of the big picture of what they're dealing with right now as well. So I'm excited for you to have those conversations and then break it down a little bit with you at the end.
I can't wait to talk to you after, but let me let you go so I can introduce the first guest. I have Candace here, who is with Sugarcane, an amazing company that designs beautiful costumes for Caravana, Carnival, and those wonderful festivals that you see that really showcases this amazing culture. Hi, Candace. How are you?
Great, Shruti. How are you?
I'm so great. Thank you so much for being here. Before we start, can you tell me a little bit about what Sugarcane does and how you've kind of had to refocus your energy and what you do as a company now that we're kind of in this middle of COVID and we don't really have live events?
Well, unfortunately for us, we had to halt everything. We were in the throes of planning. Had several events leading up to events going to be held on Ryerson campus, events off campus at our production house, and we were really excited for what this year was going to bring. And then everything had to come to a halt. We no longer had the production space or anything like that to work out of. And which made it very difficult. The carnival here in Toronto was canceled, but also all the carnivals around the globe were canceled as well, which makes it very difficult for people who are involved in this industry, whether it be musicians, dancers, designers. We all just kind of halted. What we do is actually anti-social distancing. It's about community, it's about gathering, it's about being together, it's about taking up space on the road, and really there's a lot behind even that itself. So without the actual road experience, it's very hard for this industry to survive. And right now we're all just trying to figure out what it's going to look like going forward. As you said, it takes several months to produce these festivals. Normally we'd be starting now for next year.
Wow.
And we can't really fathom that next year is actually going to be what we've envisioned Carnival as in the past, right? So it's kind of like re-envisioning, if there is a carnival, what is that going to look like? Because to have 1 million people on top of each other in a space probably isn't going to be the reality.
No, and I think that's really fascinating that you bring that point, that to do next year's event, you need to plan right now. We're in November and we still don't have the green light for whether or not we can have those events. So in that eventuality, I mean, festival creators or those who are planning for festivals like yourself, what do you do in a circumstance like this? What do you do? Do you plan it anyways with the idea that maybe you'll get the green light, or do you just halt altogether?
I think what a lot of designers and bands globally are doing is because they didn't get the chance to put their presentations out this year, they're saving that for next year, right? Mm-hmm. So many of them are hoping that that's the case. We personally are looking at other avenues and ways of exposing Carnival and exposing the art form. We've been working with a lot of technology in the past few years, even within our costume designs, things like 3D printing and laser cut technology within the costume designs, but also finding different ways to showcase Carnival through augmented and immersive experiences like virtual reality. So we're hoping that even if the Carnival itself, we can't take up space in the road, maybe there's opportunities for exhibiting or opportunities for sharing some of the work that we've been working on in the past few months, and hoping that we can experience it that way, and give a community of people that are really hurting, because again, this is something that people look forward to year round, give them something to celebrate and look forward to.
With some live events, you kind of can make it work. So for example, with like a DJ can kind of stand in the background, and then people can come in their cars, and cars can be kind of social distance, and you kind of are in your own little bubble and you party, and it's great. But what you were saying, where festivals that are very anti-social distancing, not necessarily anti as in saying no, but it's kind of impossible to social distance at a festival where the main premise of it is to actually be together and kind of come together. And you were suggesting that the use of technology, and I'm wondering if other festivals that require people being together or banding together, can those technologies be somehow used in the future? Is that something that some people might want to consider?
It can. Again, it's going to give you a different vibe, and nothing's going to replace the live event itself, right? Even this past year, many of the carnivals ended up doing sort of like Zoom parades and what have you, which again doesn't really give you the vibe and what we're looking for. What we really want to give people is something immersive, right? So if we can gather in a space where we can follow social distancing protocols, where people can be spaced out and you're sort of immersed in an environment, I think that might be the best way for us to be able to celebrate until we can get back together. And I think other events could use something similar.
Would that also mean maybe having precautions in terms of how many people could be at that event, or maybe even having to do testing? I mean, I don't know how that would really work, but or even looking at other conditions that would really make a festival like this work? Would that be the case?
I think we'd have to test it out. I think we would have to, limit numbers in terms of how many people can be in the space at a time. Holding things outside as much as possible so that, again, we're not enclosed in spaces. But yeah, right now, I don't have the answers for you as to what would work. We're really trying to, throw these balls up in the air and to kind of see which ones we can catch and how it's actually going to work going forward. Because yeah, it's something where we really want to be able to give the community some hope that we can at least celebrate and expose what it is we do. And maybe this is a time where everything's sort of quiet and settled down, where we can talk about why we do this. Carnival itself is an expression of African resistance. It was, born from slavery, and a lot of that gets lost in the music and the costumes. And I think it's a time where we can actually tell the story in different ways, whether it be through panel discussions, whether it be through, online music events, whether it be through, again, these immersive experiences that we're talking about. So as horrible as this situation is, it may also give us a time to sit back and reflect about why we do this and give some hope for the future.
Absolutely. Candace, it was such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining me and telling me a little bit about how festival creators and people who put festivals together can try and make it work or think about some ways of sustaining and surviving during this precarious time. I wanted to introduce my next guest. Her name is Corinne. She is the owner of a jewelry company called Biko. She is here with me. Hello, Corinne. How are you?
Hi, Shruti. How are you?
It's so nice. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thanks for having me.
You've been hearing a little bit of the conversation so far about live events. Biko is a boutique jewelry company that is, predominantly gets most of its sales in wholesale boutiques, selling wholesale, being in boutiques. You're also in Nordstrom, but a lot of your relationship building comes from live events, but trade shows or trunk shows. And that's really where you're able to build that relationship. And I feel like I'm wondering, how has that kind of affected you and your business because of COVID's restrictions or not being able to have those kind of live events?
It's so interesting. This has definitely been a roller coaster year and a lot of pivoting. We've relied on wholesale and live events for years. We've been around for 15 years, and it's just crazy to see how it's changed. There are silver linings too, I'm finding. So, where wholesale and events took up about 80% of our business in 2019 and e-commerce was only 20% of our business, this year we are at 60% e-commerce and 40% wholesale, with events almost non-existent. So, we're just diving heavily into the e-commerce side of things, really ramping up to, help facilitate more orders coming through this avenue. It's exciting because there are so many new opportunities. Obviously trying to make a positive out of what's been tough to swallow initially. And then you're like, what can I do here to make it okay, right? I realize more than ever it is so important to make the customer experience, no matter if you're in person or online, it has to be a magical experience. And I found myself more than ever being picky about all the little details of the customer experience ever since COVID hit. So I realized that surprising and delighting the customer in ways they didn't even expect is kind of exciting, and to figure out ways to do that. So, every detail from packaging to branded tissue paper to little add-ons like a cool branded sticker that you throw into their jewelry order, a handwritten note, of course. These all matter more than ever before. I realize social media is also absolutely instrumental. Chatting with customers over social media, I make sure I answer all their questions, any engagement, any hearts that anyone sends me in a DM, I'm writing back, just making sure they know they're being seen, right? Because you don't want them to forget about you.
It's almost like you're retaining that customer. It's so much more recreating that relationship, but in a very different way, because again, as you mentioned, a lot of your relationship building did come from the trunk shows, but now you're kind of pivoting. And so Is that sort of where you see yourself going and maybe other small businesses going, as we're heading into this very uncertain time? We might have a vaccine, things might get better, but is that what needs to be done, relying on social media and that digital marketing?
Like people will always love to touch and to try on product, and I don't think that'll ever go away. Since they have been forced to learn a new way, I do think that the future is more personalized brand relationship and experience, whatever way possible. So like something that I personally haven't done yet, and I'm so excited to do, is consider virtual one-on-one appointments or styling sessions. And like that's time consuming, but like that's where the priority should be, I think, moving forward. Obviously investing more into digital marketing, which is new for me as well. It's almost like a way to remind the customer, like, I'm here, like, don't forget about us, just never ever dropping the ball on customer service.
It's interesting you point out this idea of this one-on-one, client interaction and customization of jewelry, perhaps. What if we had this idea of having a virtual trunk show? Is that possible? Like, is that something that could be considered? I mean, making it so exclusive where you're saying, here's an invitation to this trunk show. There's going to be like 20 boutique jewelers and you will have a first sight on these jewelers. Like, is that something that is feasible, especially during this time?
I think it's something that I would love to explore. I'm open to anything that's like a new and exciting way to connect with the customer. I personally haven't. Someone actually asked me that today, like, hey, have you considered doing a virtual trunk show? And I said, I don't know how that would work, truthfully. I know there are some new technologies out there that allow for like online shopping, almost like the shopping channel, but like your own brand. So that's pretty interesting. I'd like to explore those further, but I do feel like there are a lot of exciting new technologies to take advantage of and to learn more about.
Will small businesses have to continue to capitalize on digital marketing and all of these tools, but also if we are like removing some restrictions in the future, are you going to end up not relying on that, or have you realized that this is something you need to focus on?
I think it's something that's like, we're never going back to the way things were, and this will be a new normal, whatever happens next. I don't think we want to go back to the way it was before. I think fashion, I mean, this may be another subject matter, but I think fashion was a little too fast. And I think we've all taken time to kind of remember what intentional design is and what matters to us. And I think that whatever happens next, as far as the customer brand experience, I think it'll be a new, fresh way about it. But with digital marketing, like being so new to me, I don't think I'll stop doing it. I think it is the way of the future. And truthfully, it's something that I had hoped to find the moment to start doing, to take on. So I just, I'm happy I'm finally in it. And it is proving to be worth my time. So I'm excited about that.
Absolutely. Well, Corinne, thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to introduce my next guest, who is Dan, the startup coordinator at Transmedia Zone at Ryerson University. Dan is an amazing guy because I know he's worked with independent creators before, and he's also worked with Young Turks. Hi, Dan. How are you?
How are we, everybody? I'm so happy to be here in the green room. It's so nice.
We're very happy you're here too. So you've been hearing what our previous two guests have been talking about, and as someone who's very involved in the know of independent creators, one thing that kind of resonated with me with what Corinne said is that she's had to get to social media right away. It's almost that revolutionizing of the internet and everything, and has kind of all happened because of COVID. It's kind of accelerated people to think faster on their feet. It's made people, have to figure themselves out really quickly. And from a person who knows so much about independent creators, I'm wondering, what have you kind of seen in this space because of COVID? How have independent creators been dealing with this?
The last year has seemed like multiple lifetimes, but at the same time, I feel like it's the final chapter of the 2010s. We have been in a period for so long where I think people kept waiting for around the corner. When is the digital revolution going to completely take over? When are people going to make the final pivot and jump online? And now I've got my mom calling me being like, online banking is amazing. And you've got all these moments, right, that are happening where you're seeing folks finally taking the plunge. So, you know, not to be glib about this because there's an economy behind it, but in a lot of ways, we are about to see sort of that old media rapture that a lot of folks have been waiting for and expecting for a while, but it never quite came. I think people really tried to dig their heels in and sort of live in that 20th century for just a couple minutes longer. And we're starting to see, whether you're a travel vlogger who, you know, already was living there, everybody's had to recalibrate. Everybody's had to think about, you know, Paris to Prague to my hallway to my kitchen is not necessarily the most romantic evolution. So I think what we're trying to do right now is, whether you were already living in the digital era or whether you're finally a new, you know, you're a tourist and now you've made it your permanent location, I think we're redefining what IRL is. And that is an important step, not just for culture, but I think it's an important step to ask, how do we make things better?
Sorry, Dan, but my hallway is great. I don't know what you're talking about.
Just think of the hashtags and do your best. Yeah,
absolutely. But you know, you bring up this really interesting point where travel vloggers can't do what they're doing. You know, a lot of, you know, beauty gurus, for example, get called onto these PR trips, you know, to Turks and Caicos and, you know, the Bahamas, and a company will be like, here, promote this product. And that really doesn't exist anymore. Those live events, those events where you actually have to travel, does not exist. So in that circumstance, what are these creators having to do? And of course, you know, there also seems to be an influx. We've seen, at least in the past 5 years, an influx of what we like to call influencers really come up and, you know, capitalize on these events that they're going to. But now all of that has kind of halted. So what are they doing?
Everyone is looking to figure out how they can find value in their relationship. So the question that everybody at our zone's asking, and the question I think a lot of people are asking, and unfortunately a lot of people I think just saw it evolve, which was, do you have meaning with your audience? Do you have meaning with your customers, or did you have a mirage? And a lot of people woke up in 2020 and realized they had a mirage. They didn't put the work in to actually reach out to their customer base. And so we heard about it earlier, right? Are you following up on that heart that you got on social media? Are you reaching out and in the comments? It's the same, okay? What happened in 2010s was like a marketing mutiny of deepthink. It's like, it was this idea of sell, sell, sell. And it's social media, it wasn't branding media. If you walk into a party and you go into the corner and just yell every 15 seconds, I'm selling stuff, like, you can watch something, no one wants to be your friend, they're calling you, probably the cops, they're probably pushing you out of the party. So it's like, that is where we're at right now, where people have to make the kind of jump to real relationships with your audience. You know, crack open your Latin books, kids from high school. Its audience was to listen, but when we're looking for the new way of conversation and communication, it's to have a conversation. We want to be involved. People want to be active, even when they're in this small little box.
Yeah.
So I think that that's where people are trying to find, whether you're selling something in a fashion company or whether you're just putting together a podcast. Now Spotify's on the market. They're spending billions of dollars. Netflix has, you know, a pretty good lock on what you're watching. There are these huge companies, and we have to make a decision of whether there's going to be a, you know, sort of a creator uprising, if you will, or if we're going to settle into sort of meet the new boss, same as the old boss, where we have a handful of studios.
The rise of creators, who's going to make it, who's going to break it. It makes me think of this thing that I learned in history class about realism and learning about the different kinds of ways political, like the world of politics really works, which is you have this 5 people in the wooded area, and you can either all band together and kill one deer and you all equally feed yourself and you're sustained and you're alive. Or you could be that one jerk who decides to see the rabbit and says, I'm just going to survive for myself and I'm just going to kill that rabbit and feed myself and screw everyone else. I'm wondering if that's a situation that we're having right now with the rise of these creators trying to survive and build on, you know, the real audience that they're trying to hold on to on dear life and sustain into 2021, because we're not going to see the effects of 2020 until 2021. Or are we seeing people come together? And if we're not, should we?
I think that's part of the redefining of what IRL means to people. What does in real life mean to you? And I think that we have to be better digital neighbors. We have to care about our friends down the street that maybe is no longer just the street down, you know, the lane from us. It is a true space where we lived in this era where I think people thought, I don't go on social media, I prefer my real life friends. Both exist now. I think everyone realizes that these communication tools are going to be key, for example, if a pandemic happens. So what you're talking about is something that I think is really important, that we start to see alliances. You know, I've jokingly said to people in my CanCon nerdydom that people need to channel their inner Mary Pickford and start that United Artists kind of idea. What we have at Transmedia Zone and what makes it so great to work for, but also I think for people to come to, is because you've got a podcaster and a YouTuber who might not have thought, hey, we should be talking to each other, or an old school filmmaker who's trying to innovate in their craft, but thought, you know, oh, social media influencers are this. And they have these preconceived notions from a decade of, you know, a pretty strong branding signal. Everybody has to work together, because we do really need folks to be this sort of, you know, coming from a place of community, not only just because it's much more lovely and it's much nicer to live in a place where everyone is in a community, but also from an economic standpoint. There are huge, too big to fail things happening right now that are very hard to fight against in the digital shift. It's just a consolidation, perfect storm. And if you live in Canada, you're about to hit a whole other set of problems when the government decides to perhaps, hopefully, keep arts funding going. But like, you know, from 2008, there was a crash. I had a television show, and in 2009, I was going to CN Tower elevators going up 2 stories a second. So it's a very fast shift. Life comes at you fast, as they say on the Twitter. So I think that it's something that people are really having to take a deep breath with and make community a better place.
Yeah,
take your gas money, take your transit money, depending on where you live in the country and you're watching this. But if you're saving anything and you're getting great value and you're getting a smile in this year from a creator that's making something, give that person $5, you know, give that person something to say, thank you for making my life just a little bit better in this ridiculous, absurd year.
Yeah, absolutely. Band together. Thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate that you're here and talking to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. Farewell from the green room.
I wanted to bring Ramona back into the screen and break down what we've all learned, which was a lot. There was a lot that happened. Hi, Ramona again. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. They're so wise. There was just so many things that I was hearing that I was just like, I have to jot this down because I just don't trust my memory anymore.
I mean, it's so fascinating because when we're looking at the show, it's called The Prediction. We're talking about tomorrow today. What does that mean? And we've heard from some creators, we've heard from Dan, just a lot of advice of what that future looks like for live events. And some of the key takeaways, at least I had, were just this idea, at least what Corinne said, of this idea of a live trunk show or live consultations, one-on-one consultations. I think that's such a fascinating idea. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on having a live event like that, where you're kind of able to capitalize on the moment, but you're also living in this uncertain time period and you're like, okay, what can we do?
I love it, you know, and I think that I almost found that there was something connective in what everyone was talking about, whether it was, you know, the new version of immersive experiences. And then the idea of a live trunk show feels like it just fits in that category. And what Dan was talking about having really meaningful experiences with our people. And our people could be our people who live in our house. It could be the people that we can't see because they don't live in our house. It could be our digital people, but they're our people, and to have meaningful experiences with them and these new kinds of immersive experiences that feel like they're just for us. I mean, you think about what trends we were seeing before the pandemic, and it was the rise of these live experiences that were something extra, that were something special, right? The Museum of Ice Cream or the Dr. Seuss experience, where it was going with your people to something that was so special and so magic. And this is what I think I responded to so much from what Corinne was saying, was magic and creating magic. And that's what people were responding to, was this magic that they could go enter into with their people and then share with their other people who they also love online. And I think maybe at the 8-month mark, we're starting to realize that there's a way to build that in the digital sense. You know, I find myself using this expression recently, like the phoenix rising out of the ashes of the dumpster fire.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, that's great. I love it.
You know, and hopefully that's what gives us a little bit of steam to roll through 2021. I mean, it's easy to just feel so down, and it's getting colder and the numbers are going back up, and it's really hard, and there's so much uncertainty. And it is, you know, do you plan for this reality or this other reality? But maybe there is this new reality that is taking the best of all of those. The fact that we want to connect, that we want those special experiences and the magic. You know, I think about my mom and like walking through the mall, and it was not that we even liked going to the mall, but we liked being together. And, you know, wouldn't it be wonderful if there was some kind of special experience, that kind of digital trunk show, that thing that we could do together, where it is about beautiful objects and discovering something that's new and being there first, but also having this experience that I get to do with the people that I love. Mm-hmm. And, you know, thinking about all the amazing things, the craftsmanship that goes into the work that Sugarcane does, and like that immersive experience where, yes, it's digital and yes, it's on screen, but there's something that I can still hold and feel and touch. And you're just pulling from the best parts of these various experiences. You know, 100%. I think you look at video gaming and what's going on in video gaming. And if there was one lesson I think to be learned there, when we talk about immersive, it's not the VR games that are shooting through the roof right now, which you would think of as being like the definition of immersive. It's the games where you can just hang out together. It's Animal Crossing and Among Us, right? It's just where you know you're still in your room because you don't have a headset on, but you're with the people you want to be with. And to think about what a version of Digital Caravana looks like, or a version of a digital trunk show, or a version of just kind of knowing and celebrating and giving back and giving $5, which I think is, you know, something really important to echo as well from what Dan was saying to our favorite creators. But I think that's the trend, is like not so much immersive in the sense of I don't know what's going on outside of this headset, but immersive in terms of this is a place I want to be with the people that I want to be with, as opposed to I'm trapped inside my home and I'm not seeing the people who I used to see.
Absolutely. I think if there's anything that's one good thing that's come out of this god-awful pandemic is the idea of connecting, being connected with people again, and realizing how much we need that. So thank you so much for debriefing that with me, Ramona. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful.
So inspiring. You know, I think I love hearing creators like this talk, because it's tough. These are tough times, but you just get a sense of like what we can build, and building is just
all we can do.
Building is everything, right?
Yep,
building is
absolutely.
the way we can take another step forward.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ramona, again for joining us. And for those of you who haven't been paying attention, this is Ryerson University's Creative Innovation Studios web series called The Prediction, talking about tomorrow, today. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.